And we are back. Halfway through the season and there still hasn't been a single event with dry weather. This one, Stage 4 of the country's premier drifting series, was no exception. But as per usual, aside from the weather that ruined it for everyone, there were quite a few other interesting developments. So go ahead and pour yourself your favorite drink, grab what you usually like to eat, and enjoy watching this video review of the recent event that took place at the Myachkovo track near Moscow. This one was off to a fairly tame start. The roster of drivers was the same as before, consisting of 41 names. Unfortunately, just like throughout the rest of this season, Boris Abramov didn't join the fray this time. Everyone else was in the running, well, at least relatively speaking. We saw a bunch of blown engines during the course of this event. Some drivers like Artur Zeliony were forced to use their backup cars, so there was quite a lot of commotion during practice. The assignment was more or less traditional, with a few minor alterations here and there. The full version is up on your screens, and with that, let's cover qualifying. As usual, this will be a quick overview of qualifying, because first of all, there were a lot of contenders, second, there weren't any immediately apparent points of contention, with pretty much all of the scores being fairly easy to read, even for a non-judge. Also, as per usual, drivers went out in order of being drawn, so the groups were all mixed up. For example, Group 1 consisted of Denis Miguel, Alexander Abramov, Pyotr Borodin, Vladislav Yerofeyev, and Ilya Polishuk. Initially, they were supposed to be joined by Alexei Kozlov, but due to ongoing issues with his engine, he was moved to the health group. Overall, this was a lackluster bunch, with 2 zeros for Borodin and Polishuk's respective first attempts. Their second runs were better, with Polishuk posting an 84, while Borodin even temporarily claimed the lead with his score of 88. For Group 2, comprised of Timofey Dobrovolsky, Grigory Burlutsky, Denis Sorokopud, Sergei Kuznetsov, and Ivan Pelman, we saw a gradual improvement in the results. Dobrovolsky and Pelman broke the 90-point threshold, earning 93 each for their first runs, and then 92 and 90 respectively after going out a second time. Sorokopud's car started acting up during his second attempt, though he did get 85 points for his first. Burlutsky was also having issues with his car, with a tire unseating during his reconnaissance run. This he wasn't allowed to rectify, meaning a missed first attempt for Grigory. And for his second run, he earned 84 points. Group 3. Anatoly Sherbak, Ilya Fyodorov, Kirill Matskevich, Dmitry Yermokin, and Sergei Sak. Scores were not particularly impressive. Not a single zero, but 2 contenders opted for the health group. Yermokin's car wasn't fully prepared after an engine replacement, while Anatoly's Nissan, after his first attempt that yielded the lowest score in the group of 72.5, it developed a leak, which prompted the team to bring it in for repairs. The only scores of 90 plus were for Matskevich, and for both runs, 91 and 94.5. Then came Group 4, consisting of Leonid Schneider, Danila Vorobyov, Dmitry Sherbina, Artur Zeliony, and Anatoly Kizin, and this is where we saw one high score after another. Zeliony did get unlucky, with first his flanker burning out during practice, and then his Hulk backup car acting up, with him initially moving to the health group and then later retiring altogether. Everyone else posted scores of 90 plus, some for even both runs. Leonid Schneider was best in qualifying at this point, with his score of 95.5. Group 5. The bad news, Alexei Vakhtin was forced to retire. Also, Ruslan Arefyev posted some very unimpressive scores, 70.5 and 77. Everyone else did fairly well, with the best of the bunch being Anton Kozlov, who scored 97.5 and 96.5, and became best in qualifying for the time being. Yevgeny Losyev scored 92 and 95. The others, meaning Nikita Shikov and Anton Dmitrienko, did a decent job, though they couldn't crack the 90-plus barrier. Group number 6, Grigory Gusiev, Vladislav Popov, Anton Kliemko, Damir Idiatulin, Artyom Leitis. The weakest results, if you can even use that word, were for Leitis, 85 and 84.5. Every other contender scored a 90 plus. Idiatulin, as is par for the course for him, nearly earned 100 points, and claimed the status of best in qualifying. Group 7 didn't let us down either. There was not a single sub-90 point run. That's if we discount Roman Tividar's first attempt where he made a mistake and got a 0. But then it's no surprise with such a lineup. Aside from Tividar, the group consisted of Andrei Stepov, Arkady Tsargratsev, Artyom Shabanov, Georgy Chevchyan. It was actually Tividar who posted the highest score in this group, 96 for his second run. And the last one before the health group, Danilo Skorbogatov, Maxim Grossman, Yevgeny Spirin, Ilya Popov. more scores of around 90 points, with Maxim Grossman even repeating Damir Idiatulin's result of 98, though he failed to become best in qualifying due to a worst second score. As for why the two got identical scores even though they went about their qualifying attempts somewhat differently, angle judge Mikhail Davrians answered that question, as both the other two judges had them earning maximum points. According to him, Grossman's performance was more spectacular, while Damir did a better job sticking to the assignment. In the health group, things didn't go well. Neither Anatoly Sherbak nor Dmitry Yermokin or Alexei Kozlov were able to post high scores, and as a result, they all failed to qualify. Their scores ranged from 72 to 81.5. Silioni and Vaktin were forced to retire, meaning they were also out of the running. That said, a good 22 contenders scored 90+, with best in qualifying honors once again going to Damir Idiatulin. During the briefing, the judges mentioned small angle while transitioning at the Manji, and I didn't take that literally. For that I lost 1.5 points, and another half a point I think I lost somewhere during the first sector. Mikhail Davrians is way too eagle-eyed, I think. The guy has got incredible eyesight, and he notices some things. Yeah, but my main mistake was at the Manji where I lost 1.5 points. My angle was a bit too wide, medium instead of narrow. I guess I didn't take that demand seriously, and for both runs my angle was medium in that spot. That has to be it. Throughout day 1 of the tandem drifting there wasn't really any serious controversy, aside from maybe near the end of it, but otherwise this can be a brief overview. Damir Idiatulin, Ilya Polishuk. While following, both drivers were super close, though they differed in style. Damir was controlled while Ilya was very aggressive, tapping his opponent and falling behind at the end. The lead runs were way more straightforward. Idiatulin hit every clip while Polishuk failed to. He missed 2 of them and one of his wheels went off course. 30 line points versus 21. It should be obvious who's the winner here. And that would be the first and last dry battle of day 1, because from there it began to rain. Ivan Palman versus Anton Kliemko. Once again, both performed very well in the chase, though Ivan stuck slightly closer and he had a 2-point advantage in the lead having hit everything, while Anton allowed a wheel to go off course. Palman progresses to the top 16. From here, the rain intensified, the pavement became wet. Kirill Metskevich and Pyotr Borodin were fighting the conditions more than they were battling each other. Kirill won this one, even if barely, scoring 18 line points while in the lead and then following at a moderate distance, while Pyotr nullified his score in the very first round. Him scoring 28 points for line while leading couldn't change the outcome. Danila Vorobyov and Anton Dmitrienko's teams had a bit more time to figure out what's up, as did the drivers themselves. As a result, this was a relatively smooth battle. Vorobyov did well in the lead, only missing touch and go 2/1, and was close while following. Anton also did okay in the lead, earning 1 point less due to missing the more valuable touch and go 4/1, though while chasing he couldn't stay close to his competitor. Vorobyov wins. One of the 2 most discussed battles of that day, Denis Miguel and Roman Tividar. It should have been fairly obvious on the day why Roman lost this one, but if not, here's how it went down. At first, he was clean and accurate in the lead, with Dennis following somewhere light years behind him due to a bad launch at the start of the race, even though you wouldn't call it an inactive chase. But then this happened. His car most definitely straightened out here. You can even see the front wheels wobble, with the car leaning on its springs in the opposite direction. Without even looking at the drift dynamics data, this might even resemble opposite drift, but there is no doubt that he straightened out. There was a chart going around the internet showing an angle of 1.6 degrees, though the most we saw was 2.4. But why don't we open up the regulations and have a look at Article 6.1.2. where it says that drift dynamics is a supplementary utility, to resort to only in case the judges are in doubt. It is not the end-all be-all. It is only used to assist the judges in case of any confusion. But ultimately, they make the call. And in this instance, none of the judges had any doubts about the situation. And neither did anyone assisting the judges. Everybody saw the exact same thing. The car was going straight for some distance. The same thing happened to Alexander Abramov pretty recently, and on another occasion or two earlier this year. But in those instances it happened to the chaser, while here it was the leader, which makes matters even worse. For any fans of Forward Auto and Roman out there, what would you say if the tables were turned? Let's imagine that Miguel did the same thing and they let him get away with it. What would you be writing in the comments then? Both drivers did a great job during the second round, however, that did not change the outcome. We feel for Roman, but Dennis will be progressing to the top 16 stage. And at this point, the rain became so bad that the race had to be put on pause for some time. After competition resumed, another unambiguous outcome. Vladislav Popov and Anatoly Kizin were of course battling with the conditions, but they weren't forgetting about each other either, with their cars even touching a few times. Popov came out victorious. He was following at a greater distance than Kizin, but not by much. While leading, he hit almost all of the clips, missing just touch and go 6, losing 2 points for line and 5 overall. Anatoly made more mistakes, earning just 22 line points and losing 16 overall. Artyom late as while chasing Leonid Schneider was super aggressive, however, he overcooked it and spun out. Schneider in the meantime did well in the lead. Round 2, Artyom did a decent job leading while Leonid went about following with caution as not to get a 0. He didn't, and he is in the top 16. Something very similar happened in the battle between Timofey Dobrovolsky and Dmitry Sherbina, though Dmitry didn't wait until Sector 3, spinning out right after they initiated. Now, during the second round, Sherbina had the chance to take this to an OMT, because Dobrovolsky gave him a pretty hard tap which he could have used to pull a spin to win, which Timofey most likely would have been at fault for. However, instead, Dmitry continued to the finish line and towards his impending loss. Thanks for keeping it fair and square, but Dobrovolsky wins this one. Nikita Shikov did a fantastic job following Maxim Grossman, albeit Grossman did everything he could to facilitate that with his terrific lead run. Nikita, on the other hand, did not do as well in that role, earning just 22 points for his line, and on top of that, he made a serious mistake in the final turn when he washed out while losing a lot of speed. Meanwhile, Grossman did just as good a job following as he did leading, which earned him the win. Danila Skarbogatov versus Yevgeny Spirin, and another unambiguous outcome. Danila did better with both leading, earning 30 points versus 28 for line, and following where he was closer and more measured. Yevgeny, while following, failed to properly accelerate, he fell behind. In his attempts to catch up, he struck the leader, who kept going as if nothing happened, winning the battle and progressing to the next competition stage. After that, we witnessed a bit of a sensation, albeit there wasn't any real controversy. Artyom Shabanov did alright in the lead, earning 28 points for line, but Sergei Kuznetsov was sticking super close. The two trade places, Kuznetsov earned the full 30 points, while Shabanov allowed at least 2 wheels to go off course, and from there he was unable to catch up to his opponent. Kuznetsov wins. Nothing sensational for the heat that followed. Georgy Chivchyan did a terrific job in both positions. Meanwhile, Ilya Fyodorov, while following, fell behind right after they took off, only catching up to his opponent at the main curve. He did a decent enough job leading, but it should be fairly obvious who has got the upper hand here. And another sensational battle that didn't spark any controversy. Denis Sorokoput, on top of his lead run being almost perfect and on par with Alexei Kozlov, also stuck closer in the chase, especially in the valuable first sector. And earned the win. As such, both championship leaders, Shabanov and Kozlov, are no longer in the running for this event. Arkady Tsarogradsev and Grigory Gusiev were close as barely makes any difference, having done well with both of their respective roles, but one driver did have a slight edge. This was seemingly a toss-up between an OMT and a win for Tsarogradsev, which is exactly what the judges thought. Stanislav Dolgich reckoned that they should go at it again, while Mikhail Davriant and Vladimir Safonov ruled in favor of Arkady. The battle between Yevgeny Losiev and Vladislav Yerofeyev went just like a lot of others had prior. The leader, in this case Losiev, pulls away after the launch, with the chaser Yerofeyev falling far behind and catching up only near the end. Also, Yevgeny scored the full 30 line points. Vlad did slightly worse at 28, and while following, Yevgeny left his opponent no chance, sticking close the entire way, which earned him the win. At this point, things had almost cooled down. Andrei Ostapov and Ilya Popov were the last ones due to go out, but they just couldn't figure out who was the better of the two. Heat number 1, round 1. Ostapov managed to rack up just 24 line points, while Popov was sticking pretty close. Round 2, Ilya hit every clip, but Andrei was just incredibly close. This resulted in pandemonium up in the judging tower. It's not often you see all 3 judges differ in opinion. Dolgich had Ostapov winning, Davriant had Popov, Safonov was for a one more time. 2 other people who are privy to the judging but have no right to vote. The editor of this video was leaning towards Popov's win with a possible one more time. Andrei Pauly saw an OMT. As a matter of fact, in the group chat, discussions continued long after this day was said and done, with each of the judges substantiating his own point of view. Mikhail, as it were, maintained that Ostapov was too sloppy in the lead, with his efforts in the chase not being enough to take this to an OMT. Stas conversely thought that Ostapov more than made up for his mistakes, to the point of winning even. Vladimir was somewhere in the middle. He ruled in favor of an OMT. And of course, given the circumstances, an OMT was the ultimate ruling. But things didn't get any easier from there. Heat number 2, to everyone it seemed like both drivers were on almost equal footing, albeit this time the odds seemed to be more in favor of Estepov. This was confirmed by Safonov's ruling he had Andrei winning. The other two judges ruled for an OMT, and rightfully so. However, the second OMT didn't make things any clearer. Same story as before, both drivers were almost equal. For example, Estepov falling behind in the big bend was caused by Ilya letting off. Andrei increased his angle, but there was still a tap, and his E92 was not happy to accelerate out of a wide angle. This appeared to be yet another one more time, which is exactly what the judges ruled for, except that Davidans had Popov winning once again. But you can't have more than 2 one more times. Estepov received a higher score for qualifying, and as such, he will be the one to transition to the next competition stage. Day 2 of the competition brought with it plenty of interesting developments. For starters, Ivan Palman called for a competition timeout right before he was supposed to battle with Damir Idiatulin. The curious part about that is, well, first of all, he did so while he was on the starting line, while Damir was out for his reconnaissance run. And according to the new rules, this meant forfeiting half of the heat. Second of all, this occurred before Damir, who scored higher during qualifying, was able to choose whether he would commence the heat in the lead or the follow position. A bit of time was required to gather information, including from Damir, and ultimately it became clear that Ivan lost his chase run, as Damir intended to start the heat in the lead position as he usually does. This meant that for the second portion of the battle, Ivan was leading and Damir following. From there, things were quickly and decisively resolved. Hellman did okay in the lead, missing just touch-and-go 2/1, with Idiatulin calmly following at a medium distance and earning his spot in the top 8. Kirill Mickiewicz versus Danila Vorobyov. Both did fairly well chasing, however Danila looked slightly better in the more valuable sectors. He also earned 4 more line points when he was leading. Which got him the win. Vladislav Popov versus Denis Miguel, and again, we saw just one portion of the heat. Vlad was fine as the leader, Denis lunged at him when they were initiating, then fell behind slightly, attempted to catch up, and right before the finish, there was a tap. At first, it seemed as if Miguel was at fault. But if you look closely at the replay, you'll notice that first off, Popov transitioned using his handbrake, pulling it until 0, which in itself is a mistake. Also, if we look at the charts, we'll see an enormous angle of 88 degrees with loss of speed. Vlad was on throttle when required, but then proceeded to let off to avoid going off course. As such, fault for the incident was assigned to Vladislav. Earlier this year, something similar happened between Miguel and Sorokapud, though that time the roles were flipped and we did cover that incident. Both drivers then took a 5-minute timeout, though for Denis it was free, while in Vlad's case it was not. Furthermore, it was useless anyway. They weren't able to fix his car in time. Vlad retires, Denis progresses via byrun. Next up, Leonid Schneider and Timofey Dobrovolsky had some fun. What's curious here is we saw 2 almost identical incidents. Without going into too much detail, 2 collisions in the same spot, preceded by the leader missing touch-and-go 3. The difference was in the judges' opinion on the matter. 2 of the judges considered both incidents to be identical, with the leader being at fault. 2 unchaseable runs, nothing to evaluate. And you can't help but agree. Mikhail Davidans had a different opinion. The way he saw it when Dobrovolsky hit Schneider, Timofey had already sufficiently stabilized his car, that the chaser was to blame for the tap, with him ruling in favor of Timofey. That first round was obviously the worst of the entire day. I wasn't going off course like that during practice, I wasn't making that same mistake. I guess I got distracted, and made that mistake which by my own standards I consider to be pretty bad. The pandemonium continues. Georgy Chivchyan and Sergei Kuznetsov, and what a terrific first round by both of them. Chivchyan did an excellent job leading, hitting every clip, while Kuznetsov was super close and aggressive chasing. Round 2, both did well in Sector 1, but then Gocha makes a mistake, falls behind, straightens out his line, flying through the no-go, which is not prohibited, but he did make that initial mistake. Then he catches up, here's the final bend, and yet another tap. Thankfully, both drivers still made it over the line. Once again, we refer to the battle between Miguel and Popov, and between Miguel and Sorokaput during Stage 1. Kuznetsov failed to get on the gas, which resulted in him taking a hit and losing a few points, though his score didn't go down all the way to 0. If Chivchan had spun or straightened out, that would have made the decision more difficult. Otherwise, a great lead and great chase in round 1, then the chaser's mistake followed by a mistake by the leader. The result, an OMT. Incidentally, Sergei later swore that he was on throttle when required. That could be true, but if so, why wasn't there any smoke coming from his rear wheels for so long? And how else are you supposed to look at this? Exactly. This one is obvious. But then at least the next few battles were fairly straightforward and without much issue. Arkady Tsargradsev easily outclassed Denis Sorokaput, getting a good lead run in, losing just 2 points for a wheel going off course. And he was close while following. Denis was a bit too far behind while chasing, catching up only by the end of the scored section. Also, he made a bunch of mistakes in the lead, earning just 16 points for line. Tsargradsev is in the top 8. The battle between Yevgeny Losiev and Andrei Ostapov also had an unambiguous outcome. Andrei was all over Yevgeny while following, and Losiev did a terrific job in the lead position. However, during this event, Ostapov for some reason wasn't doing quite as well leading as he was following. This time things were going great up until Touch and Go 3, where Ostap washes out, almost putting his car perpendicular to the track, with another crash ensuing. Andrei was still able to make it to the line, but that didn't help him. No surprise that Losiev progresses to the top 8. The final pair, Maxim Grossman and Danilo Skorobogatov, who were moved to the end of the grid upon Grossman's request, and they were pretty quick to get to the point. Both of them were fairly restrained while following and about on the same level. In some areas one was closer, in others the other one. However, when comparing lead runs, Skorobogatov, because he missed Touch and Go 5 and allowed 2 wheels to go off course, was obviously at a disadvantage. 23 line points versus 30, meaning Maxim Grossman earns a spot in the top 8. The second battle between Schneider and Dobrovolsky had a much more decisive outcome than the first one. Timofey was playing it a bit too safe while following, Leonid was much closer and more aggressive. In terms of leading, Dobrovolsky had an advantage of a mere 2 points. And as such, Schneider earns passage into the top 8. The best one, the OMT in the top 16. That has to be the one I enjoyed the most. When I was able to get a bit closer, press the gas a bit harder, we were very close, and yeah, that was cool. The final battle of this stage, and once again, no surprises. Georgy Chivchan was equally good in both positions, Sergei Kuznetsov did fine in the lead, but while following, his flanker was constantly on the verge of exiting the track and was losing pace. The last spot on the top 8 grid goes to Mr. Chivchan. During the course of this event, Team Fresh Racing's competitors just kept sabotaging themselves. The battle between Damir Idiatulin and Danilo Vorobyev was no exception. A terrific performance from both drivers in round 1 right until the final bend, where Danilo spins out and a collision ensues with the leader, who was able to make it to the finish unlike his opponent who had spun out. And this is where Stefanov and Dolgich saw a situation opposite of that which happened to other drivers in this spot earlier on. Damir was on throttle very much in time, Danilo was trying to catch up, and his car got away from him. Davidians disagreed. In his opinion, Damir didn't hit the gas, but instead let off the brakes and the handbrake, and that his wheels were spinning by inertia. Vorobyev's 5-minute timeout ends with him retiring. Idiatulin progresses to the top 4 via byrun. The first portion of the battle between Leonid Schneider and Denis Miguel ended in the same exact spot where Schneider and Dobrovolsky caused each other problems. Once again touch-and-go 3, and yet another collision. Leonid makes it to the finish, Dennis does not. Once again, a seemingly familiar situation becomes confusing. This time Schneider was following the line, he hit touch-and-go 3, he was on throttle when required, and was definitely not on the verge of going off course. Miguel was trying too hard to stay close, and he couldn't work around the leader. Both drivers got through the second round, and this time with no issues. Dennis missed touch-and-go 4/1, otherwise he did fine, while Leonid was in step while following, even though he was keeping at a bit of a distance. Certainly Tim taught him during this event that he shouldn't push it. Schneider is in the top 4. The heat between Maxim Grossman and Georgy Chivchan was not without issue, though it was pretty obvious watching the replay who had won this battle. Both drivers did a fantastic job during round 1, nothing to criticize them for. Then for round 2, Grossman, who realized that with how Gocha had chased him, he had to risk it and literally devour his opponent right from the get-go, overdid it when he jumped at Chivchan after the initiation. This doesn't warrant a 0, Maxim didn't stop nor did he straighten out, but he fell very far behind. Granted, Gocha was a tad late to get on throttle, but then Maxim was taking some serious risk, leaving himself no room for a mistake. Things just didn't work out for him. Looks like a win for Georgy, 2 of the judges think the same, but Mikhail Davidyans disagreed so fervently that he didn't even call for an OMT, but instead had Maxim winning. It is 2 against 1, but let's listen to what both sides have to say. So round 2, when Georgy Chivchan was in the lead, and when Maxim Grossman was following, yes, Georgy did. The way he initiated was in fact somewhat unusual. Typically he initiates using his handbrake, but he was carrying a lot of speed, and it didn't appear as if he was trying to shed any. He was moving slightly away from the course, and he was a tad late to get on throttle. But the rules don't allow us to call this an unchaseable run. This is considered a style-related mistake that could cost 4 points. Also, he allowed a wheel to go off course that's -2 points, but that wasn't a 0. As for Maxim Grossman's positioning, there's this thing known as driver's compromise. This is a very difficult initiation. He decided to risk it, but that risk didn't pay off, because Georgy Chivchan did make a mistake, and Maxim found himself in a position that he wound up very close. He initiated a split second later than Georgy Chivchan did. Bearing in mind that was a T-style initiation, I mean, perhaps Maxim should have gone for a bit wider angle, or, I don't know, compromised slightly earlier. That's not up to us. And he went with the decision that he chose. Now let's listen to Mikhail, because we did have a difference of opinion. So in the area where you're supposed to open up, where, by the way, Gocha was going 3 kilometers an hour faster than he usually would have been in that spot. So he was carrying a bit too much speed, and the way I saw it, he got on throttle after that line. An important thing to keep in mind is that there was a collision, with Maxim being unable to continue as a result of it. And the way I see it, Gocha was at fault for that collision. He was able to continue driving, but Grossman was not, and that's why I voted for Maxim. The final pair at this stage of the competition, and once again things are complicated. Arkady Tsarogratsev with some breathtaking chasing. Yevgeny Losyev did alright in the lead, although he wasn't perfect. 2 line points removed for allowing a wheel to go off course. The 2 trade places, and both performed slightly worse than required for a decisive victory. Losyev wasn't as close, Tsarogratsev missed touch-and-go 1/3 and also allowed a wheel to go off, racking up 26 line points. We might be looking at an OMT or a Losyev's victory, and once again 2 judges agreed with sending them to an OMT, and one, this time Stas Dolgi, having Tsarogratsev as the winner. Let's listen to what he has to say. When comparing lead runs, the 2 are only half a point apart. It's a negligible difference in favor of Yevgeny Losyev. But since we do encourage close and aggressive drifting, in my personal opinion, and this is why I ruled in favor of Tsarogratsev, his driving was noticeably more aggressive in certain spots. He was hanging on in certain turns where it's really difficult to do so. But yeah, he was able to stick close. I appreciated that, and that's why I was leaning more towards his victory. My colleagues, they were more about keeping it clean in the first bend, and they reckoned that egg in the first bend that later prevented Yevgeny Losiev from getting a bit closer, that it didn't do Arkady any favors. So we had a difference of opinion, that's the decision, thank you very much. And with that, let's see what happened during their second battle, which also brought with it some controversy. Did you expect any less? Similar performances in the lead, 28 points for Losiev, 30 for Tsarogradsev, and both of them were close while following. Are we going to see another OM team? The judges are in disagreement once again, but let's listen to what they have to say. So when comparing lead run scores, Arkady Tsarogradsev has a slight advantage of 1.5 points. As for what else goes into a decision, we look at the chase runs, and Yevgeny Losiev was better all throughout the first bend. They transition, Yevgeny Losiev makes a slight mistake while Arkady Tsarogradsev is in the lead. But why did that happen? After 3/1, which is the last square in the first bend, Arkady assumed such an angle that wasn't quite in line with the assignment. He was penalized for that, and because of that, Yevgeny Losiev couldn't quite get his transition right going into the second bend. That's what caused a gap to form, and that's the only area where Yevgeny Losiev wasn't as close. The reason I just explained to you. From there, all of the three transitions that were left, Yevgeny Losiev was in step and just a bit closer. It is just a tiny bit, but you can see it on the replay. All three transitions are his. When entering the third bend with the touch-and-go fours, that are next to the grandstands. Through half of it, Tsarogradsev had the upper hand. Through the other half, Losiev did better. After that, here and here, Yevgeny Losiev did a better job, also in the final portion. So Yevgeny Losiev makes up for those 1.5 points and then some, with how closely and aggressively he was able to follow. And there's the decision. I saw a completely different picture. Now, it is true that Tsarogradsev had a 1.5-point advantage for his lead run, as is the fact that when exiting the first bend after initiating, Arkady did slightly increase his angle, causing a slight issue for Yevgeny. But if we examine Yevgeny's lead run, while he was coming out of 4/3, he also slightly increased his angle, and the assignment says it wasn't supposed to change throughout that bend. So one here, one there. So Sector 1 they were more or less on par in terms of chasing. Sector 2 it seemed to me as if Arkady was closer, that he had the upper hand there. And finally Yevgeny Losiev was better all throughout Sector 3. And based on that math, I had Arkady Tsarogradsev winning. Okay, so be it. But given that the judges were in such disagreement, they could have just gone with an OMT. But as it is, Losiev will be competing in the top 4. Here's what he had to say about the previous two battles. So we went out for the first round, and for some reason I didn't have enough grip. Also, Arkady made his fair share of mistakes. Yeah, I think he did. And so the judges ruled for one more time, which made total sense. I saw that coming, but after we went out again, I knew right away that I had won. Because in turn 1, Arkady increased his angle, there was a collision, which was his fault, but I was still able to somehow work around that and stick really close to him the rest of the way. The first semi-final battle was swiftly resolved. Emir Idiatulin earned way more line points in the lead than Leonid Schneider, 30 versus 23, and he was closer while following. Obviously, he earns passage into the final race. Meanwhile, Yevgeny Losiev and Georgy Chivchyan treated us to a fantastic series of duels, despite the fact that Yevgeny's Supra had begun to act up. Specifically, he was having issues with his cooling system. Round 1, Chivchyan was amazing in the chase position, which was compounded with a terrific lead run by Losiev. Losiev takes a 5-minute timeout, and that's when he learns about his engine problems. Round 2, Losiev wasn't quite as good while following, but then Chivchian allowed a wheel to go off course at touch-and-go 4/3. That is an OMT right there. The judges mostly agree, though Dolgich did have Losiev winning. Rounds 3 and 4, at first glance, a total repeat of the first two. Both were terrific while following, as well as in the lead position, though Chivchian did lose 2 points for a wheel going off course at touch-and-go 1/3. Once again, it looks like things are moving towards an OMT, but only Davidans insisted on it. The other two judges both ruled in favor of Losiev. Okay then. My ruling here was in favor of an OMT. For lead runs, Losiev has a 2.5 point advantage. I completely agree that he was much cleaner in the lead, but while following, Gocha was way tighter. In my opinion, Gocha was better all throughout Sector 3. Sector 2, they were about even. Sector 1, in my opinion, once again, Gocha was better. However, while Gocha was in the lead, when exiting turn number 1, he was working his gas pedal too actively, which I honestly did not appreciate, and so I called for a one more time, based on similarity and quantity of mistakes. That being said, I still think Gocha was tighter when chasing. Now I'm gonna give the mic to my colleagues, and they'll tell you what they think. Turn 1, step-by-step play. Yevgeny did better with entry. Then half of the middle portion, yes, we're really going into detail here. Anyway, neither clearly had the upper hand. And going past the last of the ones in turn number 1, Yevgeny was able to stick closer. All things considered, in this turn he did better. From there, Mr. Chivchian was better all throughout turn number 2. When it comes to the subsequent transition, Gocha's technique was better at first, but he did then fall behind slightly. Mr. Losiev wasn't quite as good initially, but later on he did manage to stick closer. From there he enters the final bend, the one that's next to the grandstands. And the entire rest of the way, his chasing was tighter than that of his opponent prior. The transition at the Manji, here Georgy Chivchian did a better job. That part didn't go quite as well for Yevgeny Losiev. The second transition, Losiev did slightly worse. The final bend, both of them did very well. Neither had a clear advantage. And with all things considered, we decided that Yevgeny Losiev's chasing was tighter and more aggressive, on a larger portion of the track. His transitions were inferior in just 2 spots. And so we gave him the win, thank you very much. Hey, what's there to even say? It would have been cool to see them go at it again, but at least Yevgeny was happy. That was a great battle with Chivchian. There were a couple of one more times, and that is awesome. That's always a good thing. I had a great time. I was driving on the edge, really pushing it. After what we just witnessed, the last 2 races were a letdown. For starters, Chivchian collided with Leonid Schneider at that ill-fated third inner touch-and-go. Once again, Leonid did nothing wrong. From the looks of it, Gocha was very much at fault. Leonid was washing out slightly in that area every now and then, but without losing too much speed, if we're not counting the first battle with Dobrovolsky. Also, his line and throttle input were totally on point. According to the judges, this area was mentioned multiple times during the briefing. Why would you be trying so hard to catch up and while cutting corners then? And that's what causes these sorts of incidents. The judge's ruling reflected what we just went through. Chivchian is at fault. 5-minute timeout, Time Up wasn't able to repair their car on time, and on top of that, Leonid was starting to feel unwell. This became very apparent during the broadcast. He even needed medical attention. He was unfit for another round, but third place was his. As for the final race, well, there wasn't one. Yevgeny Losiev had to be towed for the pre-final race parade, after which he retired due to engine problems. Damir Idiatulin went for a bye run, earning 2 first places for his team, with the 3rd team-related win also getting attributed to fresh racing. Before the final race, unfortunately, Yevgeny suffered engine failure. We decided not to torture it, because there's not much time left until Krasnoyarsk. Also a billet block, He is quite an expensive item nowadays, but I'm confident that it would have been a ferocious battle with Yevgeny, because he was working hard at every step of the way. Unlike me, he was really going for it. And honestly, I am not sure if I would have beaten him. Out of our entire team at this event, Yevgeny put in the best effort. That was a hectic event if there ever was one. And to think it was seemingly off to an easy start, nope, that's never the way it goes. But then all the more interesting. Not to mention the fight for the title just got way more intriguing. Hey, all the better for the fans. The next event that'll take place in Krasnoyarsk on the 9th and 10th of August should be pretty interesting. Prior to it on July 26th-27th, the St. P Coliseum is due. As part of Stage 5 of RDS Open and Garage Fest, tickets are on sale at tickets.vdrifte.ru, or you can watch the broadcast on RDS TV. The RDS Open broadcast is free for registered users. Okay, now a word from our prize-winning drivers. It's all a bit of a blur, but I enjoyed this event. I mean, you can't be unhappy when you're on the podium, right? So I'm happy that I scored points for the team and made it onto the podium, and was even able to have fun. Now, I know I could have done better. I would have hoped for some tighter drifting. But since I was focused on results, that wasn't really necessary. We took preparation for this one very seriously. We got here on Wednesday, set up Damir's car, tweaked it here and there, and on Thursday got to work on mine. We did everything according to plan. The cars were driving well. At 2 other events we had some issues with our pace, in St. P and Nizhny Novgorod. But this time we were ready. Our mechanics really went the extra mile. They made a few adjustments, and it was off to practice. We were a bit cautious, but our heads were in the right place. And subsequently, during the competition, things went pretty well. Today I had a lot of seat time, went one more time with Arkady, twice with Gocha. At the end, I was able to make it to the final race. But during the battle with Gocha, my car suffered a failure. A piston had melted. With a severe misfire, it somehow made it to the end. But now there was no way I'd be able to take part in the final race. This event was magical. Over all the years, I've barely ever had events like this one. Maybe like 3 or 4 times in my entire career racing in RDS. It's sort of a turning point, especially mid-season. As for why it's a turning point, well, the early stages of this season were... they didn't go particularly well. And this was pretty much my last chance to get back into the running for the championship title. Which I am now. I do have a chance. And I'd just like to remind myself that now is no time to relax. For the next 3 events, I've got a lot of work to do. I'm okay, I should recover, thanks. The results indicate that only now do I personally feel that I'm ready to walk outside of this tent, to broaden my perspective, to see what's going on with the other teams and contenders. Only now do I feel like my car has become competitive, as well as myself. It's as if everything is falling into place. It took a couple of years, specifically 2.5 years, for the team to become what it is right now in its current state. And for me to once again feel like I'm a competitive driver. I'm not really fixated on my results. My goal is always to enjoy myself as much as I can, and make it as far as I can. I don't really think much about points. That said, I do have 2 goals. One of them takes priority, and that, of course, is getting first place among teams. The second is helping Artyom Shabanov become champion, and to help Grossman and Matskevich make it into the top 10, by any means possible. So there you go. Overall, I'd say things are going more or less the way they should be. Things are going as planned. There are still 3 stages left, a few awesome racetracks, and I reckon things can very much change for the better. In any case, so far so good. I have to say, competition has gotten tight. The days when you can just wing it are gone. It used to be much easier to win. Nowadays, it requires a lot of risk. You have to be driving on the edge, and your car has to be in perfect working condition. The regulations have gotten strict, and you might get penalized for even the slightest deviation. Competition is fierce, there are a lot of contenders, and there are a lot of talented newcomers who really know how to drive, which I'm happy about, of course, because I wholeheartedly support the Russian drifting scene. I am so happy to see people like Shabanov. They give me faith that drifting in Russia will live on. They are younger than us. Our days are sort of numbered, but we still got it. We're not going to retire just yet. But yeah, this is a spectacular series. It is awesome. I don't know where else there's such competition. Everyone has worked with their cars, found the grip. We saw some quality drifting. Also, Anton Kozlov was able to fix the problems with his engine. His performance is now consistent. Also, Artyom Shabanov is still going strong. He's very competent and consistent. So in 2025, I'd say it has become pretty difficult to be competitive compared to last year. And so by the time we sorted through the minor issues and found the grip, half of the season has gone by. We were somewhat behind in terms of points, but for this event we came ready, we put in the effort, dialed in the cars, and also I was able to figure out, you see, all of these years at this track, I used to struggle with the second transition when I'd be following. I was never really able to fully grasp what exactly is the best way to do it. But during this event, in my head, it finally clicked, and I started getting it right. And so now I was ready to stick tight to any competitor at all stages of the track. I knew I had a fighting chance, and I knew what I had to do. I mean, you know that we tend to be smart in our approach to each and every race. And so we will display some high quality and spectacular driving. I don't like trying to predict the future, so we'll see what happens. I mean, what's even the point of setting expectations? It's hard to say. Because the weather this year has been pretty unstable. I'm actually starting to feel like that's how it's going to be at every other stage from now on. It's been such a long time since conditions have been either just dry or just wet. Obviously, it's better when it's dry. But now this is the new norm. When conditions on the track are mixed. We'll see what happens, but we will do our best. I don't see us getting a lot of practice. We have a lot of work to do. There is a lot we have to do with the cars, in terms of servicing them and doing a few slight modifications. There is a lot to do. It's critical for us to get everything ready to be shipped out, do a bit of tuning in advance, and practice. Because, you know, out there you just need to get into the zone, enjoy the racetrack and the tandem drifting. I just want to get staged at the starting line, do a hectic flip, initiate with backwards entry, hit the gas, and feel that it was perfectly executed. That is the absolute best feeling you can get on the red ring.